Sure.
We're live.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Paul from Changescape Web, and today I'm joined by Ken Tucker from Changescape Web, Ian Cannell from Outsource Marketing, Jeff Steck from, I never know how to pronounce that, Tellerica. Is that correct?
That's close enough. Tylerica. Yep.
Tellerica Marketing System.
Those are my kids' names.
And normally Apurv would be with us from Fixture Marketing. Hopefully he'll join us. Maybe he's just running a little late. And today we're joined by John Jantsch from Duct Tape Marketing, and we're talking about his new book, The Fractional CMO Plus Model. John, welcome. Thank you for joining our podcast today.
You bet.
So I guess let's start with the obvious question. What is the Fractional CMO Plus model? What is a fractional CMO?
Yeah, you bet. So as the name implies, fractional, part-time, I guess would be another way to describe it. And then CMO, of course, is Chief Marketing Officer. So it's really playing, so it's pretty obvious what it is, I guess, right? But it's really playing on what I see as a really emerging trend in fractional everything that, people I think have moved to. We've gotten all used to working with people virtually. We can hire talent from anywhere, but we maybe don't need. In fact, most businesses of a certain size don't need a full-time, a lot of things don't need a full-time, CFO or CMO. And so it's really playing on the idea that they have that strategic marketing function, but they don't necessarily need somebody sitting in a seat full-time providing it, but they do need it still. And so the fractional model is just a way for somebody to get really that kind of level of experience, but at a cost that is a fraction of what it would be to hire somebody full-time.
So, John, I'd like to ask you a follow-up. We've been talking about, or businesses have been using outsource marketing for quite a while. How do you distinguish outsource marketing from fractional CMO?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that you're bringing in strategic leadership from this particular position. The outsource might be, I have a task, I need it done. Oh, this person can do it, and so I will outsource that. Certainly there are similarities in that a lot of times people will outsource things to, a company or a VA, on a fractional basis, 10 hours a week or something like that, that they might be getting some things done. So there are some similarities that way. But the title, at least, CMO, certainly implies, strategic leadership that's going to be brought to the organization as well.
Yeah, John, this is Ken. So a lot of businesses, they don't even really think about having a CMO. Right. They don't even know what a CMO is.
That's right.
And at best, they may have somebody that serves as a marketing coordinator, or it may just be something that people kind of pick up and do as they go along. So first of all, can you talk about, kind of what level does a business need to be at in terms of size or revenue or numbers of people, whatever metrics would make sense. And then second of all, why would they want to jump from nothing to the point where they're having a fractional CMO in place?
Yeah. So initially when a business is getting started, a lot of what they need is traction. Does the market even want what I sell? Can I fulfill, what it is that I sell? So you have a lot of things where, they're quite often founder driven at that point, very much. I don't know if there's a magic revenue number, but you start to get to the 2-3 million range. You're probably adding some team, and you definitely are at a point where that's a point where a lot of companies plateau because they've been very founder driven. The founder was good at selling stuff that the company does. They kind of plateau there. And so having some strategic leadership from the outside come in and actually give the company some direction for growth and to help orchestrate, a lot of times what happens is companies are, the idea of the week is what their marketing is. And they're buying a tactic here, they're doing a tactic there. They try this, they go to a conference and they hear they ought to be doing this, but nobody's really orchestrating anything. And I think you start to get to that level where you've got team and you've got maybe even verging on departments then bringing some sort of strategic, even if it's, a lot of times it's been consultants that they've hired. I mean, bringing somebody in who's going to say, look, I've got the experience, to take you where you want to go. And I'm going to actually become maybe a part of your team, or at least be seen as a part of your team. But I'm going to help direct the direction, the marketing direction for our growth.
So kind of related to that, since it's bringing somebody in from the outside, which I know, I mean, I personally get why there are a ton of benefits to doing that, but how do you deal with culture, making sure that the person kind of blends in with the team as it exists, and the culture that may or may not exist?
Right. Well, obviously that's an important factor, but it's actually one of the benefits of bringing a fractional person in because you go out and you hire that full-time CMO and then try to insert them in, and it doesn't work. You've really cost the organization significantly in terms of direction and momentum and growth. And so in some ways, the fractional CMO, yes, you want that person to come in, you want them to understand the culture, you want them to understand, everybody's role. But you do have the flexibility, or I should say more flexibility in that arrangement, because it really is almost a contractor in a lot of ways. And so you probably you definitely don't have the same cost, but you also maybe don't have the same commitment in terms of, of what you would have in a full-time hire.
Awesome. John, in your book, you talk about the fractional CMO model being a strategic pivot. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Sure. So there are two audiences that I'm addressing there. One is the buyer of such services, and then the other is the provider of such services. So, a lot of agencies, I think, have gotten stuck in the, selling tactics, selling packages of tactics. And while those can, and in many cases do, help an organization grow, from an agency standpoint, there's a lot of pressure on pricing tactics. I mean, we were laughing off air a little bit about, all the things that AI is replacing and can do. And I think that's driving. I mean, we can argue all day long whether or not it's good, but you can get a website now for about $15 from somebody on Fiverr. And so, that's putting a lot of pressure on folks that provide strictly tactics or project work. And so one of the big pivots I'm seeing in agencies is that by positioning themselves as this fractional CMO or as this strategic leader, they are actually repositioning, their business. They're also repositioning the relationship that they're going to have with their client. Because if you hire somebody that calls themselves a fractional CMO, you're pretty much expecting them to do some strategic work on the front end. And what we're finding is that people that really commit to that, agencies, consultants that really commit to that, they're going to attract, I think, a better client, a more long-term client, a client that understands about investing. But they also are going to, I think, change the relationship that a lot of agencies have with their clients typically, which is much more transactional, which is much more vendor-like. But by coming in and positioning yourself as the strategic leader inside of an organization, you become a trusted advisor immediately. Even if after all the strategy is done, you still recommend a lot of the same tactics. I think you have a different relationship with your client.
Just as a quick follow-up, John, we've seen this in a lot of marketing where any business can basically put a bullet point. Any practice management software can put a bullet point that they do marketing. But even from just thinking forward about this, for our listeners, what makes a good fractional CFO or CMO? Sorry, a CFO is totally different, but a CMO. Yeah. What kind of traits should people be looking for when hiring someone like this?
Well, there's really two types of fractional CMOs. I should have covered that earlier in this, but this is a great point to do it. There are a lot of people that they were a CMO somewhere, maybe decided they wanted to go out on their own, hung out their shingle, and they basically sold, a fourth of their time to 4 different companies. They come in and say, "What do you need? Do you want me to be in the meetings on Tuesday? What do you need for me to be?" And those, again, a lot of times what the company believes they are buying is you've got experience that you can bring that we don't have, that you've maybe grown a company to where we want to grow, and we want to buy that experience. And so, a lot of cases that's enough. Personally, if you are, I think in some cases, let's say you're a $5 to $10 million business, well, you probably have team in place, and you probably have some things, that are working that have gotten you to that level. And you really just need that advisor, type of role, that person that's, looking at everything and saying, yeah, you're on the right track. But where I think the real opportunity is, particularly for agencies, is that $1 to $5 million business. They really don't have a lot of anything. In a lot of cases, they've, kind of grown to a certain place. They need to go now to the next stage of their business. And I think that person, that type of business, should be looking for somebody who not only has proven experience and can demonstrate that, but also has a proven system. I think where a lot of people, run into trouble is they bring in a fractional CMO and they say, what do we need to do? and it's completely like, abdicate. Whereas if a fractional CMO can come in and say, look, here's how we're going to build this. Then we're going to build this. This is a repeatable system that works, that I know will deliver value. I think that's what they should be looking for. They need that strategic part, but they still need a lot of orchestration. They still need a lot of building, of things. They probably don't have a team. And so they also need somebody who can access a team or can actually do the work itself. Because I think that's where, a lot of fractional CMOs want to come in and say, here's your plan. Good luck. And most businesses in that smaller range, particularly, they need the plan, but they also need somebody to execute.
Yeah, great, thank you.
You bet.
And a lot of them think they can execute it, and they can't.
I find most businesses just are like, you're going to do it all for me. Thank you. Right. It's like, as long as I trust you, I now know I have one less thing to think about.
Yeah.
John, in your book, you talk about something called the Fractional CMO Success Matrix. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
You bet. So I alluded to some of the ideas behind this, but the idea that you're going to hang your shingle out and say, I'm a fractional CMO. And then people are going to say, yeah, come on down. Right. What do you need? I'm going to sell you for my time. And what people quickly realize is that just doesn't scale. I mean, you might get paid nicely for your time, but that's not so much a business that's going to be something you can scale. So the three elements that need to come together is you need a message. You need a point of differentiation that says, look, I solve a very specific problem in a very specific way for a very specific business. And that really is the fractional CMO positioning in a lot of ways, is the start of that, that component of it. You then need pricing that's going to, because you are able to communicate a message that you're solving a problem for a very specific person, you're going to attract somebody that is going to be willing to pay a higher price. So you need that higher price because you have to have a profit margin that will allow you then to delegate a great deal of that work. And that's really where, I mean, we've all seen this. You can go out there and say, yes, I'm a fractional CMO. I'm going to do strategy for you. And then I'm going to turn around and do all the work myself. And you can do about 3 clients, maybe that way. Right. And so if you can have that message that attracts the right client, then you are able to then price it in such a way that is so profitable that you can then afford to delegate a great deal of that work. However, the third component, so I said message, price, the third component is system. You've got to have, in order to effectively delegate, you have to have a repeatable system that you can teach others to do. And those three, the place at which all three of those meet is really the sweet spot for building a highly profitable service business, really, of any type.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And this next question was going to be by Apoorv, but he's not here with us today. So I'm going to jump in, John. Duct tape marketing has always been big on the idea of strategy first. In fact, that's what attracted me to it as a marketer. But can you talk about what that is and how it fits in the fractional CMO model? You talked a little bit about that, but can you connect those two ideas a little bit?
You bet. So what really makes our model work, I talked about this idea of repeatable system, but what really makes our model work, I believe, is that instead of selling retainers, we sell a strategy first engagement. So if somebody comes to us and says, I like this fractional CMO idea, I want to hire you. It's like, great. Here is our system. Here is step one. You are going to go through this process. It has a set price. It has a set deliverable. It's been done thousands of times now. You can count on the results. What that's doing for us is, and that is almost a product. We call it strategy first. It has very set, here's step one, step two, step three, step four. It delivers tremendous value. And delivers that value very quickly because we've gotten very good at delivering a repeatable system. And so that solves the issue in many cases of attracting the right client. But it also, for us, solves it. It is the fractional CMO part because it forces strategy rather than let's have a discussion about strategy. It forces strategy, but then it also builds the trusted advisor relationship that really then allows us to effectively say, for the rest of your life, we are going to, bill you a certain fee per month and trust us to execute on what you need next. So it's really changed the game, I think, in terms of, I keep talking about the relationship, but it's really changed the game in terms of deliverables because of that factor of building so much trust. So it is, I like to call it the fractional CMO model with scope, because I think that's one of the real challenges with this fractional CMO model is, a lot of people are just, again, treating it as what do you need? And we're saying, no, here's what you need. We know what you need because 80% of businesses need 80% of the same thing. So let's run down this track. You're going to get the strategic work, but you're also going to get the orchestration and implementation done in the right way.
That's awesome. I actually did an audit for a large company. I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago. And what was so fascinating was that they had just hired a new leadership guy. So essentially a CMO in the business because it was a large business. And they essentially had just hired him. He was trying to get a handle on what was working, what wasn't. The fascinating thing I found about that process with him, just bringing him through the audit results, was just he had no understanding of upper level strategy. So even though he was very focused on here's what we need to fix, or, we need to switch out this vendor for this vendor. It was, just from an observation standpoint of providing this audit, I was like, wow, these guys are going to be in trouble in, a matter of time because he's so focused on the wrong things.
Yeah.
So, John, this question comes from actually some of the things that we're doing for a couple of clients right now. But what about other fractional models, such as a fractional SEO? I mean, is there opportunity there? Is that a thing? I mean, can there be other fractional things?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it comes down to really being semantics. I mean, I think, anybody who hires an SEO company, it's probably a fractional role in a lot of ways. They may not call it that. I think that a lot of the fractional C-suite, is really, I think, leading a lot of this terminology. Fractional CFOs have probably been around the longest and have the most acceptance. And I think they've paved the way for this terminology a lot. I mean, most companies don't need a full-time CFO. They need somebody doing their taxes, somebody doing their books, and somebody occasionally giving them advice on maybe tax savings or, on purchases they might make or something. And so I think that fractional CFO has been, long a role in the small to mid-sized business. So whatever you call it, whether it's fractional SEO, I mean, I think that the world has accepted this idea of, hey, I can put my whole team together. I mean, my company, we have 5 W-2 employees and probably 8 or 10 contractors, all of whom are, part-time in many cases, fractional in many cases. So I think the world has just really accepted that type of, hey, I can get the best talent for this specific thing, but I don't need a 40-hour-a-week person to do that. So I think everything's up for fractional.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because, me and Ken were talking about this yesterday, that you can hire people with specific skill sets that are very good at what they do in this fractional manner for a lot less than you can bring on an employee. By the time you pay them a full-time salary, benefits, small businesses can't afford to hire that skill set in-house full-time. They just can't do it.
Yeah, and in some cases, they hire somebody and then they tell them, we need to run YouTube ads, figure it out. And so, it's not only are they paying that person, they probably are going to take them 4 times as long and maybe not get same results. There's a great
John,
book
this
called
is Ken
there's a
again.
great book called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. And the whole premise of that book is, anytime you've got a challenge in your business, don't say, how do we solve this? Just say, who can solve this? Who can we go get, to make this problem go away, or to help us get through this challenge rather than us trying to figure it out on our own.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually a great segue into a question I wanted to ask you, John. I frequently see businesses hire business consultants who provide advice on marketing that clashes with what we all know is best practices, executing the Duct Tape Marketing System and serving as fractional CMO roles. So how important do you think it is for fractional CMOs to actually have some business consulting savvy? Because I think the tendency, unfortunately, has been, I'm going to go hire this person who read this book or is certified on this book about a particular business methodology. But at the end of the day, they have no clue what it takes to really put together a modern marketing system.
That's right. So I think there's a couple answers to that. I mean, one, because you've had experience in a big corporation as a CMO does not necessarily mean that you have the chops to actually do this in an entrepreneurial fashion. But I do think that having some background, some experience, even if that experience is, like many of you guys, I've worked with 20, 30 businesses, over the last 5 years. And I've seen where they've struggled. I've seen the pitfalls. I've seen what works, doesn't work. I mean, even that level of experience obviously makes you miles ahead. You mentioned the Duct Tape Marketing System, Ken. I mean, having, whether it's, reading a book is one thing, but actually having a community like we have, having a certification, having a tool that is like Strategy First that has evolved and evolves every single day because of, more input and more implementations of it. I think that can go a long way, frankly, towards, having somebody who has an expertise in installing a proven system can go a long way towards giving somebody a lot of value very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that there's not a value in hiring business consultants because,
right.
I mean, marketing and sales is not everything, but it is the fuel that drives everything. And, I think to the extent that you can have somebody who has the business savvy to understand, are you investing in selling the right products?
Yep.
Are your products profitable? Are they the ones that your ideal clients are buying? Is it easy for you to implement? Can your business scale around these sets of solutions? Those are critical things that honestly, I see way too many people who stick their toe in as a fractional CMO and they don't get that. And even worse, the business consultant has no clue what it takes to really have the rubber meet the road when it comes to implementing marketing systems and strategies.
No question.
Yeah,
And John, sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Implementation is key, and that a lot of times that's something that gets lost. And John actually touched on this. I think that here's what you need, here's your strategy, but then the implementation just gets lost. It's like, okay, this is great. You gave me a great plan. How do I implement this?
Yep.
For me, as this conversation has been unfolding, one of the things that popped into my head is the difference between a fractional CMO and a consultant. John, would you say it's fair to say the fractional CMO just has a lot more skin in the game?
I think that's the implication. It doesn't always mean that's the case. I mean, I certainly know some consultants that are, have clients that they are deeply involved in. But yeah, the idea behind a CMO role would be that, I'm in charge of direction, of the marketing, not just in, did we get more clicks this week? It's like, what's the strategic direction that we're taking this company? What new products do we need to be developing? Those aren't always questions that an agency or a consultant is asked to provide answers to.
Mm-hmm.
And John, can you talk about the value proposition of a fractional CMO?
Sure. Well, I think the first one comes in the name. I mean, fractional is much more affordable. The average salary, you go to salary.com of a CMO, is anywhere from $260,000 to $350,000. If you're thinking about, say an average marketing budget of 10%, on an organization, well, you've got to get to about $3 million business just to have that even make any sense at all. So the fractional cost, and maybe even the right size cost is another way to talk about it, for most organizations, is one of the leading benefits. The experience that you might be able to bring in. I mean, the right fractional CMO has, maybe worked with dozens of businesses that are trying to do what you're doing. And so that being able to just tap into that experience is at a strategic level is important. And then the last one probably is flexibility. You can potentially turn it on and turn it off. Once a quarter, it could be, where you'd have a big powwow, with your fractional CMO. Maybe you've got a seasonal business, and I'm not necessarily advocating this because marketing never ends, but maybe you have an ability to turn it off completely, for some period of time. If it doesn't work out, sorry, Ian, this is just not going to work out. It's not you, it's me. But that type of firing, so to speak, if it doesn't work out, is a lot easier in this type of arrangement.
Yeah.
And something you just said about a seasonal business, a lot of times if you do have a seasonal business, your slow time is where you should really probably ramp up your marketing efforts.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a client years ago that would always want to, winter was terrible for them. They would always want to turn everything off. And we finally convinced them, let's just leave it on this year. And they had the best spring, ever. Right. Because, all the algorithms are they want to see consistency, things.
Mm-hmm. So John, let me ask the next question. We were talking about, as you alluded to off air before we started, it's on everyone's mind. What about AI? It's all the rage. Does it play a role in the fractional CMO model?
I feel like when I'm on podcasts now, if they wait till the 27th minute to mention AI, like the duck should drop down. You remember Groucho Marx? It's like, that's the word. But yeah, it's on everybody's mind. We use it extensively. It is a tremendous strategic tool, a great research tool, a great assistant. If you've got a great strategy, for example, we teach a strategy of how somebody should be thinking about their content roadmap, their editorial calendar. Well, if you've got a good process, strategic process in place in determining what that roadmap should look like, then AI can be a great tool for building outlines, for repurposing content. I don't think it's probably going to get there. It's not there in terms of creating original content. We were laughing about images and videos that are, kind of the promise that it's going to be able to create. I don't think it's there yet. It will probably get there. But it is really good at doing certain things. It's very good at outlining. It's very good at ideation. It's very good. A lot of times you're staring at a blank piece of paper and you think, I don't know, what should I write here? And you go into one of these tools and you get, oh, okay, yeah, there's a couple ideas I didn't think about. So I always tell people it's like having a really inexpensive research assistant that you can say, go find me this stuff on this. And, you're still going to check that work. You're still going to, add your strategic bent on anything. But it's to the place where AI is not going to replace us, but it's somebody who is as good as you, who is also using AI, is the real threat. So, I think it's to the point where agencies and consultants, just from an effective or an efficiency standpoint, need to be employing many of the tools and experimenting with them as they come along to the benefit of your clients.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
think
a
that's
couple.
a good assessment. I've heard you say before that the context that you work in with
Right.
the AI and that uses everything, and that's the strategic thinking part that you're talking
Yeah.
about, right? The
I mean, that's the
CMO
piece
brings
it
it's
can
that
add.
experience.
Right. I mean, it can go out there and research a whole bunch of stuff and give you a bunch of answers, but it can't add the context that you know that you need that information in, and that's our job. It actually makes us as I think because people can go there and get 200 words of gobbledygook, you know, for nothing. I think it makes the role of the strategic thinker much more important in the world of marketing, frankly.
Mhm.
You know, a couple things you said there is that AI isn't going to. I read an article a while back, and AI isn't necessarily going to replace people. It's going to change how they do their job
Yeah.
in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. And you know, AI does a lot of things, but I think it's important to remember that it's not some kind of magical answer. Because it also does a lot of things badly,
Yeah.
like we were talking about with the images. And you know, we have a client that they've been with us for a while, and they never did any kind of blog, no content. So they decide they're going to use AI to start writing blogs. And I'm like, you know, you do realize that Google has AI detection in their algorithm. So
Yeah.
you can't just use AI to generate content and then copy and paste that. You still have to have a real person go through it, review it, probably rewrite part of it. It's not a magical answer to all your problems.
No. It's also garbage in, garbage out. I mean, the better
True.
you are at writing prompts, at giving it detail, it's like anything. You know, if you've worked with a graphic designer, the more complete your brief is that you give them, the better information you're going to get back, and that's true of AI as well.
Yep,
So, John,
absolutely.
I've got another question that's one of my favorite topics always, which is marketing automation.
Uh-huh.
And we had a great conversation with Jay Baer about his latest book, The Time to Win, just really talking about speed of response and how critical that is. And you know, he frames it as, you know, many small businesses potentially their biggest competitive advantage in nailing that and owning that and building
Yep.
that before their competitors do. So I wanted to ask you from a marketing automation perspective, um, how does that really, you know, how do you see fractional CMO model working with marketing automation and making sure that that's integrated into you know, what's being done?
Well, I mean, I don't think it changes any of your thinking along those lines. I mean, marketing automation is a tool, maybe you'd even call it a channel, you know, that's here to stay. And so the fractional CMO's job is to understand how do we effectively roll that out? Because there's also ways for you to roll out marketing automation that is off-putting, that causes friction as well. So it's really the effective execution of using marketing automation that and the strategic idea of it, because you know not every business I'll use Jay as an example. You know, you don't want your brain surgeon to be the fastest brain surgeon, you know, in you know in the industry, right? So not every business you know, marketing automation is you know a convenience, right? But there are a lot of businesses. You know, when I get contacts, I have to go to a doctor, you know, exam every year, and I love that I can just go in there and make my appointment. They know who I am. There's the calendar. Boom, I'm done. You know, no phone call, no email, no nothing. It's just scheduled. You know, that type of automation creates a better customer experience. So I think the fractional CMO's job is just to understand how can we use, you know, automation in a way that enhances the experience rather than create friction.
Yeah, I think it
That would be
ultimately
great if we
always
had
comes down.
one.
It always comes down to the, you know, understanding
Yep.
the business and their differentiation, and you know, and like you said, John. I mean, it needs to be in a context,
Yep.
you know, based on what's being offered and provided, you know,
Yeah.
through the
I mean,
business to make sense.
just because somebody can put an AI bot on their website, it doesn't necessarily mean they should.
Right.
It goes back to knowing your ideal client. What are they going to
Exactly.
respond to? What will they
Exactly.
like? What will they not like? Yeah.
That's right. No, 100%. Yeah.
All right. Did we miss anything? Anyone have any other questions for John that we may have missed?
For John, do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't think so. It's always great to see you guys. We don't get together in person as much as we once did for various reasons. So it's always great to have an opportunity to chat with you. I know we have a live audience, but I just feel like this was a nice little get together of some folks that I, deeply admire and appreciate.
All right. And there was actually, I deliberately waited till the end to ask to have the AI question in there because it's, like you mentioned, it's always that shoe that drops, but it's not going away. It's something that is going to be used, but you have to be careful how you use it.
That's right.
You have to be cognizant of that.
Just a tool. You can you can cut a piece of wood with a tool, or you can cut your arm off.
Exactly.
So.
That's a good point. That's a good way to put it. But John, thanks for joining us today.
You bet.
Can you tell everyone a little bit about duct tape marketing and how can they get your new book?
Sure. So it's actually an ebook, just to be fair. So it's only available really in download. And so if you go to Duct Tape Marketing, DUCTTAPE marketing.com, you'll see a little pop up there that'll offer you that ebook. You can also find out about our certification and training, the program that you all have gone through and licensed, as well as is detailed in minute detail there.
All right. Well, John, again, thanks for joining us today. It's probably a good place to wrap up. Ian, you want to take us out?
Sure. Thanks for our listeners, our audience, our watchers, our viewers, and for John for joining us today. This was a great discussion, John, and thank you for all that you've done for us as well as consultants that have gleaned lots and lots of knowledge from you over the years. This is a fantastic topic. I hope a lot of people pick up your ebook. And until next week, folks, keep calm and market on.